My name is Ralph Smith, and I'm the co-founder of fedsmith.com. That's the company that's providing you with this video, as well as some others that we've done in the last few days or few weeks, to try and keep our readers up to date with things that are going on that in fact impact the federal workforce, and sometimes substantially impact the federal workforce. The purpose of the video today is to give you some advice on events that I'm quite certain are going to be happening in the relatively near future. And to tell you a little bit about my background, because you don't want to take advice from somebody who doesn't know what he's talking about, but it might give you some idea. Mark Twain was credited with a statement that said, "History doesn't repeat itself, but it does rhyme." And a lot of what you're going through now, we've gone through before in the federal government. Back in the Carter administration, the 1970s, President Carter and the president of the American Federation of Government Employees, Ken Blaylock, went around the country and did a series of public events to drum up support in the public and Congress to pass the Civil Service Reform Act. That happened. It did pass, and in 1978, it became a law. What the CSRA did was change a lot of events, a lot of organizations, a lot of processes within the federal government. That's not unusual. It happens periodically. I worked for an agency that had been reorganized, repurposed, renamed, reconstructed in many ways. It changed from the Civil Service Commission to the Office of Personnel Management. And what OPM did at that time was went around the country, I was in the DC area. I went around teaching federal employees, especially managers and supervisors, what are their obligations under the CSRA? What's changed? What hasn't? What's the SES? What's the MSPB? Those kind of things. So that was a big change. We're going through that again. And it's very clear that the Trump administration learned a lot in his first term. A lot of the things that he wanted to do, he was getting around to. For example, Schedule F happened in October of 2020, right around the very end of his term. It didn't get through in part because of the lateness. This time he's prepared. I don't know who his advisors are. They're not the people who are testifying before Congress getting confirmed, but they've got a lot of people that understand the federal human resources system, and they've been working. On his first day in office, President Trump signed something like 100 different executive orders, some of which have a substantial impact on the federal workforce. So that's the kind of thing that you're dealing with. Probationary employees may feel that they're at risk, and that's justified. People working in DEI offices may feel that they are at risk, and they came to work one day last week and their email access was shut off, and they've been put on administrative leave, and a couple of reports are now saying that a RIF, reduction in force, is coming their way pretty quickly. So this is moving out fast. It takes time, it takes preparation, and the people who are making these decisions and coming up with the processes and the executive orders are on the ball. They know what they're doing, and they're implementing it pretty quickly, early, very early in the president's second term. Some of you, I understand from reports, are saying that the federal workforce is upset, discouraged, feels unappreciated, feels unloved, etc. And there's certainly reasons for that. It's a very disconcerting time. Some of the federal employees, of course, are relatively new. And for those who were in college fairly recently, this probably a much different environment than you're used to. There's no safe space. You don't get together with your friends or your professors and talk about your ideas, your fears, your concerns, and then go together afterwards and get a glass of wine or smoke pot or whatever it is that you wanted to do. Instead, you're working in a very political environment, the federal government. It always has been a political environment, and I suspect it always will be. Let me mention a couple of quotes to you just to put it in perspective. What you're experiencing isn't new. President Ronald Reagan had said something to the effect of the 9 most terrifying words in the English language are, "I'm from the government and I'm here to help you." And that reflected his political philosophy, and he worked to establish a more efficient, smaller government. He set up something called the Grace Commission. Now, some of you may compare that to DOGE, Department of Government Efficiency, that President Trump has set up. Trump had said at different times, there's a deep state and it works against him. Michael Corleone had said at one time, if you ever watched The Godfather, this is nothing personal, it's just business. And that's the reality of politics. When I was in graduate school, I read something about a man by the name of Machiavelli. He wrote a book called The Prince, studied that, and he is credited or blamed for identifying real politic. Real politic is a modern political science theory that says government approach is realistic. You, to have power and to run a government, it's better to be feared than to be loved if you can't be both. And what you're experiencing now is a man who's experienced in government, has an agenda given to him by the voters, and is planning to carry it out. And that's what's happening. And they're doing it in a way that, if you understand the federal human resources system, it can be done. But let's look at the federal workforce today and why buyouts are a good possibility of occurring in the future. The federal workforce has an average age of about 47 years old. It's older than the overall U.S. average for a workforce. Employees under 30 in the government are over 7% of the federal workforce, but about 20% of the employed U.S. labor force in 2023. Over 42% of federal employees were over 50 in 2023, compared to about 33% of the U.S. labor workforce. So it's an older workforce. A lot of these people are eligible to retire, close to retirement, thinking about retirement, or maybe just getting tired of their government job and thought about going to work in the private sector where maybe they can, maybe they cannot make as much money or more, but they may be having an urge to check out and see what they can do. Because of that, the older workforce, the number of people who were younger, uh, lacking in the federal workforce, buyouts become a, a possibility. And it may be a very attractive opportunity to a lot of people. So that's a good thing. Out of all this change that's going on, it's nice to have some things that you might welcome. This might be one of them. The advice I have is to think about whether you want to take a buyout in advance, because once the opportunity occurs, you may not have a long time to think about it. In fact, you probably won't have a long time to think about it. You need to ask yourself questions like, can I afford to live on the amount of money that I'll get as an early out retiree? Your human resources office will hopefully be able to help you with coming up with a rough calculation that'll be useful to you. How much in future pension benefits will I be giving up if I take an early out? Now, the answer is probably, for many people, none. You won't lose any pension benefits, but make sure you want to know before you leave, am I going to take a cut in my pension? If so, how much? And if I am getting a cut, or even if I'm getting what I think I should get, sit down with your family and decide, is this enough to live on in the manner to which we have become accustomed since I've been working for Uncle Sam? If I can't afford to live on the pension, ask yourself, how much more do I need? And if I need more money, how am I going to get it? Now, some of the federal employees obviously have skills that are easily transferable into the private sector. So you may get as much money, you may get more. So you may end up with a federal pension plus an additional pension later on from whatever company you go to live with. Those are the kind of questions you have to ask yourself. Do you have the skills? Do you have the opportunities available to you in the area where you are living? And answer those questions realistically before you decide, yes, I'm going to take this pension or this buyout to add to my pension, or I'm not. It's easier to think about it in the cool light of the day before the opportunity actually presents itself, because you probably have a pretty good idea right now if you're eligible to retire or not, and roughly how much you'll get based on your high three if you do decide to retire. And maybe you're 60, 65, and you'll also get Social Security. Of course, you'll get your TSP, those kind of things. But each person is in a different situation. Financially, the time in government is different. The impact this would have on you and your family. You have to be able to answer those questions to your own satisfaction before you decide. What's an early out? An early out is called a voluntary early retirement authorization, or a VERA for short. This has to be approved by OPM for your agency. It may cover all agency employees. It probably won't. Chances are it will just cover people in the part of your agency being reorganized, reconstructed, downsized, whatever the case may be. VERAs are only offered for a specific period of time. It's called a window. It may be 72 hours, maybe a little bit longer, but it's not going to remain open for long. Typically, the agency will want to find out how many people are going to take this. How do we get down to the number we're seeking for a desirable number for our workforce to meet our mission requirements? Once you accept, you're going to be moved off the government rolls pretty quickly, meaning your payment, your salary, is going to stop relatively quickly. Typically, an employee would be off the rolls in maybe as many as 2 or 3 days. You, to take advantage of it, you usually have to have 20 years of service and be at least 50, or have 25 years or more of service, regardless of your age. So that's a quick note on the early out. The buyout is different. A buyout is called a Voluntary Separation Incentive Program, or VSIP for short. It can be offered with an early out, doesn't have to be. Sometimes it's offered in addition to or instead of an early out. The amount of the buyout may vary. In the past, it's been around $25,000, but that depends upon the individual length of service, the amount of your salary, etc. In some parts of DoD, there was authorization to pay up to $40,000, again, depending on various factors that don't apply to everybody. But the amount of money, obviously, is substantial. Although keep in mind, this amount of whatever it happens to be is before taxes, so you're going to lose some amount going back to the IRS or to Uncle Sam. Employees accepting a buyout have to remain off the rolls for at least 5 years, or then they have to pay the money back. And that would include coming back as a government employee or coming back as a personal services contract employee. So the purpose of the video is just to give you some idea. In the past, these kind of opportunities have come up. Agencies like them in the sense that it's easier than a reduction in force. It's less stressful than a reduction in force, oftentimes on the employee because you're getting additional money. It's also, frankly, easier on the people administering it because when you're dealing with a reduction in force, you're firing people. They're not leaving voluntarily. And there's a lot of hardship, angst, etc., that go along with that. The people that have run a RIF that I know of have never said, "Boy, I'd like to do that again. That was a lot of fun." I've never heard that. What I have heard are statements like, "If I have to do that again, if I have to do another RIF like that again, I'm going to leave instead of doing it because it's such a miserable experience." So agencies don't like it, but it's how you reduce the workforce if you have to do it. Buyouts, early outs, are a good way to reduce the size of the workforce without going through all of that angst, all of that trauma that necessarily accompanies a RIF. A lot's going on. A lot of it's happening very fast. A lot of it is negative. A lot of it creates anxiety in the workforce. That's certainly understandable. This may be an opportunity that comes along that will help you, provide you some extra money if you take the opportunities that are presented. For a lot of people, they're not a good opportunity. You won't want to take it. But think about it. Think how it would affect you. Think about, is this something you'd want to do? And do that before the offer comes out and you can stay there in your house in a cool air-conditioned apartment or house and think, I want this or I don't want this. I've made a logical, conscious decision and this is what I'm going to do. Don't put yourself in the position of trying to decide after you've gone that I made a mistake. I've worked with some of these issues before. Sometimes people will come back a month later and say, I've changed my mind. I want to come back. As I explained, that doesn't happen. And there are no appeal rights. You voluntarily left the government. So that's the purpose of this video. I hope you find this helpful. If you decide to this kind of information is useful to you, FedSmith provides a website newsletter. We also have a subscription list. It's free. We're not trying to sell you anything. You can also, on YouTube, sign up to receive notification of these types of videos that are coming out as these changes occur and may prove helpful to you in fulfilling your obligations as a federal employee and determining what may happen to you with all of the changes that are going on. Thank you for listening, and we wish you the best of luck.